Welcome to the Why Not Today podcast, where we celebrate courage, determination, the power of saying, why not today? I'm your host, Leslie Kane, and each episode, we dive into inspiring stories of individuals who have taken bold steps, faced their fears, and embraced the possibility of today. From entrepreneurs to artists, dreamers to doers, we explore the moments when they said, enough waiting, why not today? Join me as we uncover the heartwarming, the audacious, and the transformative. Whether it's pursuing a lifelong passion, overcoming obstacles, or simply choosing joy, our guests share their journeys and inspire us all. I started this podcast in honor of my father, Patrick Kane, who often said, why not today? Remember, you're just one decision away from changing your life. And I always do share before I introduce my guests that I do not edit these, and we are trying a new platform, so hopefully we'll be good today. But one of the reasons I don't edit the podcast is I want people to be real, and I want to encourage people to just do the thing and start. And it's not going to be perfect. We just got to take that first step. So my guest today is Donna Figueroa. Did I get that right? And
You
she
did.
is Functional Medicine Nurse Practitioner, and our company is Midlife Midwife Functional Health. And I met Donna at a networking event. And then we had coffee the other day, and I love her story. And oh my gosh, she's got such a courage journey that we could be here for hours. So I'm going to have to reel her in a few times, I think, because she has a cool story from a college student to international travel to nurse practitioner to a midlife degree in between. She's got lots of degrees and lots of history. So before we hear all about Miss Donna, why don't you introduce yourself, a quick bio and a fun fact, and then we'll talk about your courage journey.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. Quick bio. My husband, I'm married to a lovely, amazing husband who's also my life coach. His name is Hector. He's from El Salvador. We speak Spanish at home. I have a nice little kitty cat that lives with us. Our adult son lives in Rhode Island, and he's an engineer who works in clean energy. And I'm down here in Northern Virginia. A fun fact about myself is that I traveled to the Soviet Union during the Cold War in 1982. Traveled all over the Soviet Union.
Wow. That's kind of fun fact. And we were talking about that the other day. And although we're very close in age, you paid attention to the Cold War. And I'm like, oh, I heard about it, but it really wasn't anything I really thought about or paid attention to, because that wasn't the world I was swimming in. And you obviously were, because you went to Rhode Island. Well, let's start with courage. What does courage mean to you, Donna?
Courage means to me, I think, proceeding into unknown territory or doing something you're not sure about despite fear or uncertainty or discomfort. Like putting those negative feelings or thoughts aside and just forging ahead anyway.
Just going for it and saying, why not today?
Going for it. Say, why not today?
Exactly. So you've had a big, long journey. As I said, mentioned you were internationally traveling, doing all kinds of things in Russia, to a nurse practitioner in functional medicine, and you've had a transformation in your own health in the last 10 years, and learned lots of stuff. So I know we could go lots of different ways, but I always ask, as I'm hearing people's story, and I don't know if we want to start this or weave it in, like those why not say moments when in your life that you've had that pivot, something happened and you thought, I'm just going to do it. And it totally changed the trajectory of your life. And I think you mentioned one around Russia, but I don't remember what that was.
Well, I think just choosing to go to the Soviet Union during the Cold War.
Because you were in college, high school?
I was a college student. I was studying international relations, and we had right down here at the American University in Washington, D.C., we had a professor who was Russian and maintained a dual citizenship, one of the very few that did that during the Cold War. And he decided to take a study group of select students to the Soviet Union. This was in 1982, and I just thought that was fascinating. The Cold War scared the bejesus out of me, and I really was afraid of the Soviet Union, like most Americans, and I kind of felt like
didn't pay any attention to it.
Right, but I was studying international relations, and I was living in Washington, D.C., and I kind of, like, I like to take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and I just thought, maybe going there will help me understand what this is all about. I want to see that what's going on there? Are these real people? Is it a fake world over there? You heard so many stories from our government and our news and all that. It was also the year that the Olympics got canceled. Well, we did not attend the Olympics because they were being hosted in Moscow. And I wanted to go. There was a lot of news about that and information, and I wanted to go for myself and see what was going on. And so I decided to do that. It was kind of interesting because most of my friends at the time were going in different directions. The traditional study abroad student, I'm going to study in Paris for a semester, and this one went and did an internship in Milan to study fashion, and this one went to New York City, and here I am. I'm going to go to the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Isn't that a fun idea?
Interesting. I went to school in Virginia, but Southern Virginia, and we really didn't. Not many people studied abroad, and I read a book which I've quoted many times in this podcast from Daniel Pink, and it talks about regrets. The number one regret of people in the U.S. is not studying abroad.
Interesting. Well, I worked in study abroad. You mentioned that was my first career. This nursing that I'm in now is actually my second career. I had a 20-year career running study abroad programs and international programs for the University of Rhode Island. And that's what I did before I decided to get into the nursing.
That's a big transition. So any big why not say moments in your first career?
Well, when I decided to leave it and come down here to switch gears, that was a big why not today moment.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. So let's talk about that. So how did you go from international studies, working university, to going to school to become a nurse practitioner in a midlife? Like big jump.
So the transition for me was my pregnancy, believe it or not. I had been at the university about 10 years, was pregnant with my son, and I fell in love with my pregnancy and enamored by the whole process, and absolutely in love with my midwife. And I just thought, God, I really want to do this. This is what I want to do. I want to do this. And so I started talking to her about what it entailed. And I did some research at the university because we had nursing and midwifery programs at the university. And I just decided, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to work towards this. I don't want to do international education my whole life. So I plowed forward and I started working on my bachelor's degree in nursing while I was still working in international studies. And all my tuition was paid for because it was one of my benefits of the job. I was kind of sailing along, and I was planning to finish my bachelor's and then go on and do my master's. The university also had a master's program in midwifery, which would be the next step. And I was going to just stay working where I was. They were paying for my tuition. I was going to stay there as long as I could, get all this done, and then transition. But what happened is about halfway through the bachelor's in nursing, the university did away with the master's program in midwifery. So it was not a possibility for me to stay there working and get the tuition as a benefit. So I had to look elsewhere. And I looked, the only two other programs within New England, I was in Rhode Island, and the only other two programs in New England were too far away to commute, and they were not desirable locations to relocate. So I started looking outside Rhode Island, but realized quickly that it was going to be very costly to move all of us, like a complete move. So I was struggling through the end of my bachelor's program. I applied for some other programs. I had my sights set on this one program that was a joint program between Johns Hopkins and Shenandoah University. I interviewed for it. I thought I was a perfect fit, fully qualified.
But you were in Rhode Island, and Johns Hopkins was in Maryland, and Shenandoah's in West Virginia.
In Virginia, in Winchester, Western Virginia.
Okay.
But it was a joint program, but I had my heart set on it because it was the Winchester program was run by this amazing home birth midwife, which was all crunchy granola, natural, just like me. And the Johns Hopkins piece was very professional. It was a clinical specialist degree, and the two of them together I thought would be just a perfect marriage. It's exactly what I wanted. Unfortunately, I interviewed for the position and they turned me down, which I was devastated. And I had actually put all my eggs in one basket, like you're not supposed to do. But that's the story of my life, Leslie. I never have a plan B. So,
and that's sometimes a why not today thing. If you have a plan B, you wouldn't have pursued where you need to be if you had a plan B. You would have just accepted it, but you fought. So I love this story. So keep going. Sorry.
Exactly. So I got rejected, and I thought I'm going to call and find out why, because I meet all the requirements and I'm I'm older, I'm smart, I'm getting great grades. And I called and they told me that the woman who interviewed me from Johns Hopkins rejected me because she thought it was taking me too long to do my nursing degree because I was doing it only part-time. She didn't think that I was dedicated or committed to it. So she didn't want to take a chance on me. The other woman, who's the midwifery director at Winchester at Shenandoah, I felt I had really hit it off with her. So I thought, let me call her and see what she thinks, because I had a great rapport with her during the interview. So I thought maybe she'll tell me something different. So meanwhile, at this point, all applications for all these programs were closing. The next year was floating away. I wasn't going to be able to get in anywhere. But I called Shenandoah University and I got the secretary on the phone and I said, "Hey, I'm so and so, and I had this interview with Juliana. She was the director of the program. I'm Donna Figueroa, and I just wanted to speak with Juliana if I can for a minute." And the secretary said to me, "Repeat your name again." And I told her, and she said, "Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Juliana has been wishing you would call.
Wow.
Juliana put an appeal out to the universe to bring you her way because she wants you in her program, but she was unable to reach out to you and let you know that because once Johns Hopkins rejects someone from that joint program, she's not allowed to reach out. It's just an agreement they had." So she said, "I know she's going to call you right away. Leave me your number." And she did call me right away, the director of the program at Shenandoah in Winchester. And not only
That
did
was
she,
definitely a why not today moment. Like, do you remember where you were when that phone call happened?
yep, I was sitting at my desk at my job at University of Rhode Island, and I was just like dumbfounded. And Juliana got on the phone and she said, "Not only do we want you here, we're giving you a full scholarship to come."
Wow.
Because she loved the fact that I had been a Peace Corps volunteer and I'd done a lot of work in the community with women, maybe not in nursing, but I still did a lot of work that was health related and nutrition related. And she was very interested in that. And she just saw a lot of drive in me because she knew I was working full time, going to school part time. She knew that I was determined to get this done. So they offered me this scholarship to come down to Virginia. And the only caveat was that I had to get all my paperwork in 24 hours because that was the deadline. They had this scholarship that they literally, up until then, had nobody worthy of. They said, "We don't have anyone to give it to.
Wow.
And you're our person. But you have to
Why
get
not
everything
today
in."
moments or God winks, as I call them?
So I had to get everything in within 24 hours. But guess what? I did it. I got references. I got transcripts. I wrote essays. I got it all done.
And isn't that amazing what we can get done when we have a deadline? If you would have had a month to do it, you would have waited for the last couple of days.
You're right. Yes.
So you brought your family and you guys moved to Virginia.
Moved to Virginia.
Wow.
From Rhode Island my son was in middle school, which is a terrible time to move. If I had to say what's the worst time in a child's life to move them, I would have to say it's middle school.
The only thing worse would have been moving a girl.
Maybe. And my son also, mind you, he has a chronic illness because he's a type 1 diabetic on insulin. And my husband, he had just lost his job anyway because of the housing crisis. He worked in financing for mortgages, and that was the time of the housing crisis. It was back in like 2010 or something like that, 2009, 2010, 2011, whatever it was. And in order for me to accept this scholarship, I had to commit to working as a nurse full time during the first full year of the program, because in order to do my clinicals the next year, I had to have over 1,000 nursing hours under my belt to be able to do the clinicals. And so I could not get behind. So I had to commit to work full time as a nurse and go to school full time. There was no way I could take care of a child or a home. So my husband had to not work. He had to know. We went into this knowing that he could not work. He had to be devoted to the home and my son and everything else.
How old was your son then?
How old was my son then?
You said middle school.
Yeah, he was in middle school. He was let's see, he was about 10 or 11, maybe 12. And so it was literally a whole family commitment. You know.
Right. So you did that. You finished your degree, and then you never pursued being a midwife.
I caught my 40 babies in school. I became a certified nurse midwife. I passed the exam. I did all my boards. I am a nationally board certified nurse midwife. I chose not to work as a midwife once I graduated because I did not enjoy working in hospitals. That was the main reason. It had nothing to do with being a midwife. I love working with the pregnant women. I love catching babies. I love being present at births and having the honor of bringing a baby into the world. But I did not enjoy working in the hospitals. And that was really the main reason that I looked for work
So
in
what did
clinics.
you do when you got out of school?
I worked in clinics, mostly women's health clinics, mostly in community because I'm fluent in Spanish. I was very marketable in the community clinics. So I worked with pregnant women. I worked with them all through their prenatal periods, their postpartum periods, with birth control, with GYN exams and problems and all kinds of things. So I did everything except catch babies.
Okay. So now you did that for years, and then now you have a new career. So how did you get to this career?
So I got to this career by spending 10 years in the old career, realizing that it was not fulfilling my desire to create lasting sustainable health for people. I found that the conditions that I was forced to work in as in a traditional healthcare system, let's say, required me to be in and out of rooms in 10 to 15 minutes, seeing 25 to 30 patients a day, barely able to answer a question, never mind educate a patient on what was causing their symptoms or problems, or how they could prevent it in the future, or how to correct it in a lasting and sustainable way. So
and
that
I think you had a why not today moment or something in your son's life, your life propelled you into your functional medicine. So let's talk about that.
correct. So I found myself in the throes of perimenopause about it was like 8 years ago. For typical women's menopause experience in this country, right? 40 pounds overweight, can't get the weight off, feeling, grumpy, grumbly, gas and bloating, hot flashes, headaches, brain fog, brittle nails, hair thinning, like the whole 9 yards, all the things. Just typical, midlife woman, and wasn't happy. Didn't like the way I looked. Didn't look the way I felt. Thought that was just the way it's supposed to be, like most of us do, and we got to kind of trudge through it, But it coincided with my son having a crisis. We found him. He wound up. We found out it was exposure to toxic black mold. And it took forever to get him diagnosed. No one in the traditional medical system could help him. They did exams, they did brain scan, they diagnosed him with everything from infections to anxiety. No one could help him. I finally did my own research and started learning about a more functional approach to medicine, and got him to the right doctor, who turned out to be an environmental doctor who was certified in functional medicine. And through watching her and observing how she diagnosed and treated him, I became fascinated with the process. And in participating with him on the extremely restrictive diet that she put him on, I said, Bud, what does every good mother do? They want, in solidarity with their kid, with their child, who my son is telling me, how am I going to do this in college? And it was very restrictive, no grains and no root vegetables and no dairy. And I mean, it was very restrictive. I said, buddy, we're going to do it together. So I did the diet with him.
If you were to do it for somebody else and yourself, like if the doctor would have told you to do all those things, you probably wouldn't have done it.
Never, no. But it's your kid. When it's your kid,
right?
So I did this restrictive diet with him, and lo and behold, a lot of my symptoms started clearing up. And I thought, oh my goodness, my legs don't ache anymore. My joints aren't aching anymore. I had been told by my physical therapists and doctors that I needed double hip replacement surgery. My legs were so bad I couldn't walk. And here I was, losing weight, getting rid of my aches and pains, getting off of pain medication that I had been on for eons. I stopped having GI symptoms. My hair got nicer. And everything just started improving. And I thought, there's something to this. So I said, I want to study more about this. And off I went to start studying functional medicine. And I decided this is where I belong. Like, I felt it right away. This is where I belong. This is where functional medicine views the body. Traditional medicine views the body as a series of systems, right? You've got your cardiovascular system, your endocrine system, your respiratory system, your skin. Everything's a system and everything's separate, and there's a specialist for each one. Functional medicine, we view the body as only one system with many functions. So we take a very holistic approach and we look at it all, and we really take into account people's lifestyles and their genetics and their environment, and we get to the root cause of symptoms and dysfunction, and we fix them or get rid of them so that they can have lasting, sustainable results that are real. You know,
Which I love, and I've heard several people working with functional doctors, and they've gotten
yeah,
great results. My youngest sister has Down syndrome, and my mom and my dad had some health issues. And my mom goes to the doctor. I'm like, what did the doctor say? Oh, the doctor was so nice. I'm like, I don't care if the doctor's nice. Like, they can't figure things out. I'm like, let's come to figure out what's going on, which I love that you do. So I know you now have a practice and do some coaching around this. And you shared something which I'd love to have you share, because a lot of my audience is women and my age. There's your transformation formula. What are the 4 things that are important to transform?
Yeah. So I studied transformation because I said to myself, okay, I did this to myself, but how can I make sure it's going to work for others, right? Really wanted to dive into it. So I studied transformation a little bit, and I realized that for transformation, you need 4 important pillars, the 4 legs of the table that are transformation. That's what holds it up. And number 1 is you need motivation. You have to have the drive to do it. If you don't have the drive to do it, or you're doing it for someone else, it's not going to work. You need to have something at stake, and that can be anything that's high stakes for you. It can mean your health. If you have a poor prognosis, or you don't feel well, you've been told that you have an autoimmune disease or cancer or just something chronic that you're dealing with, that's high stakes to get rid of that. If money's at stake, if your home is at stake, if your car is at stake, if someone says, if you don't do this, we're going to take your home away, that's high stakes.
Well, I think having some skin in the game.
Having skin in the game, that's exactly what it is.
If you're paying for something, you're going to do it. If somebody gifts it to you, you might not be
Yeah.
a part of it.
Right. It's like the difference between a $10 or $20 Weight Watchers meeting. That's good, and it's going to motivate you for the time you're in that meeting. But is it really over time going to be a long-term skin in the game? So you also need, the third is a container. So there needs to be a beginning, a middle, and an end, so that you know when and how this transformation is taking place, and that helps with the goal that you're working towards. And then the last thing you need is human contact. No one can do this alone. So my son and I had each other. I had a nurse practitioner that I worked with. I still have nurse practitioners and doctors that I work with, and you need coaching. You can't just have someone say, okay, Leslie, I'm going to give you these supplements, and I'll come back in 3 or 4 months, we'll see how you're doing.
Right.
It's and here's your diet plan, and here's your supplements, and go on your way. No, you really need,
like owning your own business is, it's great you have no boss, but it's not so good that you have no boss. There's no accountability. Like, nobody knows what I'm doing all day, and nobody cares.
Exactly. It's a little challenging like that, which is why we create networks, right? Just like the network you're creating, your Why Not Today network, and the one that Tina Johnson has, and I'm creating my own little network, and I have an organization with business coaches. It's really important to have that human contact, and
Absolutely.
which is why, so I integrated that in my little method. I made, like, it's called the Midlife Mastery Method. Say that 10 times fast. And so it's a combination of healthcare, coaching, a nutritional plan that includes, I don't just say, oh, go on the paleo diet. I say, here's the plan I want you to have. It has the entire justification for why you're on it, and explains it. It's got menus. It's got a shopping list. It has,
It's telling you what. It's telling you why.
right. And then I've got a nutritionist on staff who's a registered dietitian, and she'll work with you. And we have coaching hours every week that are part of the program.
I love your program. I think lots of people need it.
Yeah,
The courage to take care of ourselves. So
absolutely.
So, Donna, how would you encourage somebody else to go back to school, to get the degree, to travel international, to start a business, to do all the things? What is your encouragement?
I tell people this all the time. It's my favorite saying, and I can't stop reciting it. I always say, leap and the net shall appear. Like, don't let anything hold you back. If you want something, you got to go after it. Don't worry about, the net will appear. And in my experience, it always does. Some way, somehow, we come up with our head above water, don't we?
Yep. I was interviewing somebody earlier for the podcast, and she said she has a tendency to jump in the pool before she looks to see if it has water in it. I'm like, yeah, that could be me. Like leap and then
Yeah.
figure it out. Like
That's like the story of my life, and nothing bad has ever come from it.
yeah. And it may not always be perfect, and we figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, it's never perfect. Even this
No.
transition wasn't perfect. It sounds like it is, on paper, a few years later, looking back on it, it's all fun and giggles, but it's not. There were a lot of struggles, a lot of obstacles. Absolutely.
Exactly. Well, I always tried to tie back to my dad in the podcast. How you knew, people are like, I didn't know your dad. Well, and it's the funny story. We got together for coffee the other day, and you're like, one of my best friends knew your dad. I'm like, how did you figure that out? Which was kind of cool. So you shared that your friend that lives in Reston, and you're telling her about a luncheon that I have, and showed her the logo of Why Not Today and the story of my dad. And she's like, I know him, or I knew him. He passed away. But is that the right story?
Yeah, she saw the combination of the logo, which looked like your dad, with your last name. And she said, this is really weird, and then she sent me his obituary. She found his obituary, which had a picture of him and the name, of course. And she said, is this the same person? Because I know this guy. He passed away a few years ago, and we used to see him all the time when we were walking our dogs. And I said, that's so funny. That's him. And apparently she lives like in the same town you do.
Yeah,
right?
like as I said, she's probably a half a song from me, and I got in my car. Like I could throw a rock almost at her.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a connection. And then when you said that when you were told no from the school and you called and asked why, my dad always taught me, ask. The worst thing they can say is no. I remember being a little girl, and you want to have a sleepover with your friends, and they're like, well, I'm afraid to ask. I'm like, afraid to ask? Just ask. They're just going to say yes or no.
The worst thing, right. That's the worst they can say is no, then you know.
Exactly.
But I'm also a big advocate for it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Well, that is the way I was raised, so that's definitely a dad connection. And I mentioned that to a friend of mine's son one day, and he goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, you were not raised by Pat Kane.
Oh, yeah, same with us.
And his dad is a definitely rules kind of guy. And my dad was like, oh, the rules are for other people? Let me see how I can twist them. So, So, well, thank you for being my guest. And so what's the best? We're going to share your contact information in the show notes. So what's the best way for people to find you, Donna?
So I definitely want everyone to know that I will do a free consult for anybody. They can get the link on my website, on Facebook, my Facebook page. I have an office. Huh?
I need to do one.
Okay. You get one. Yes.
Okay.
You can schedule one. And I have
which we'll share.
I do have an office here in Leesburg. I see patients in person every day on Thursday, all day. And I do telehealth the other days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. I also, I'm licensed in Virginia and Maryland. So as long as you're within the state of Virginia or Maryland, no matter where you are, I can help you.
Yay. Well, thank you. And thanks for being on today. And I did want to remind everybody, if you're watching this, listening to it, that we do have it on all the platforms, video and audio, if you want to listen to both. I was talking to somebody the other day who's literally listened to almost all of them, and said the other day she listened to one and then watched it. I'm like, oh, she's paying attention to all of them, so which is kind of cool. But I was going to say also that if you're in the Northern Virginia, we do a Why Not Today Connect luncheon once a month. And I have started and kicked off, and all this information is on my Why Not Today podcast website. It's called Why Not Today Unleash Your Inner Brave. It's a mastermind to help people starting businesses. It can be overwhelming, and just like you said, Donna, all the transformations, we need those in starting businesses. We need that human contact. So that's what I'm providing with the mastermind. So if anybody's interested in learning more, obviously go to whynottodaypodcast.com to find out all the scoop on the luncheon, the podcast, listen to past episodes. Always looking for people to review the podcast, like it, share it, get your friends to listen. So Thank you again for joining us on this inspiring journey. Remember, every day is an opportunity to take action, chase your dreams, and make a difference. So why not today? And as I said, subscribe, share, and keep pushing forward. Until next time, stay motivated, keep making things happen, and say, why not today? So thanks again, Miss Donna.
And thank you.
Remember,
it was a pleasure.
Why not today?
Why not?